activism, it's not just us like petitioning and making signs, but I think there's a level of activism that comes with communion and communication with our fellow man, whether that be a white man, black man, an Indian woman, whoever it is, like spreading knowledge, spreading love of self. I think that's a level of activism. I think love is a form of activism. I don't think we talk about that enough.
My name is Alex Lewis, and today I'm chatting with father, writer, and storyteller Joel L. Daniels. He's also the author of a book about things I will tell my daughter. I'm really excited for you to hear Joel's story, so without further ado, let's jump into it. Here's my conversation with Joel L. Daniels. All right. I am here with my friend, Joel Daniels. Joel, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate it, bro.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man. Well, I was just telling you this, but you have like quickly become one of my favorite follows on Twitter, social media, all that, just because of how you're using words to encourage. And, for people who may not be following you out there, or checking out the stuff you're doing, who are you?
Who am I? I think at this point I call myself a storyteller. That's kind of been the easiest way. I normally segue into like the other shit that I do.
Yeah.
But really the two titles I feel like I've adopted most in the past 2 years have been storyteller and father. Those are probably the things that I think are the most important to me. And storyteller encompasses the aspect of writing, of being an author, but also, being an MC and fucking with music stuff and being a poet, a performer, a speaker at times, a digital social media maven, whatever, and then father that kind of couples along with that. That also kind of falls into the storytelling umbrella too.
Yeah.
I think. So
absolutely. Yeah. And, for you, when did you first realize that words have power?
Oh man, I've really been writing since I actually knew how to write, I'd always been keeping some level of like a journal of poetry. I remember a friend of mine, old school friend of mine, he hit me up on Facebook randomly and was like, I don't know if you remember, but in third grade, like Joel, you used to write poems. Like I would write like rhymes to him to give to other girls and stuff like that. And I didn't remember that. But I think even before that, second grade was probably the biggest moment for me. I remember I played Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the school play. And there was a level of like power that I saw, like being on stage. And honestly, every kid in the world at that age wants to be adored and like wants to be the center of attention. Well, not every kid, because some kids are very much the introverts very early on. Yeah. But I recognized in that moment how much I actually enjoyed being at the front of the stage and using words in order to kind of bring a level of togetherness amongst people. And then I've kind of been running with it ever since, like as an actor and as a performer, as a writer, just kind of trying to find different mediums in order to tell stories, but using words to tell stories and how much that like mattered to me.
Yeah. And so for you now, kind of going through some of that progression of early on realizing like, hey, there may be something here. Like for you now, what is the power of words and storytelling?
Oh man, I think we can change the world. You know what I'm saying? I think as much as Obama's legacy is about law and regulation and community building and things of that sort, I think when you look at Obama's speeches, right, like the power that words can create, and like the movement, this movement in words, this movement in speeches. And part of me used to kind of struggle with like the activist role and what that looked like, because, I've protested, I've marched, I've signed petitions, all this other stuff. But there's something about using my words, much in like the same way a Baldwin has, like using words as a form of activism and not just art, in order to spark conversation, and in order to also to disarm people and disarm groups of people that I think are using words in malicious ways and finding ways to kind of use words in an opposite manner to kind of bring people together, and also to help rejuvenate a movement, and to also be to plant the seeds for a new movement if possible.
I want to take a few moments just to sit there because I think we are in a time right now where obviously activism has always been in America, but right now we're in this season where things are more divided than maybe we being here now have seen them. And so,
Absolutely.
For you, like, what is what does activism mean to you, but also what is its importance in, this common day that we're in?
Yeah, I think what we tend to do now, especially in communities of color, I think, is compare what's happening now to what happened maybe in movements during the 50s and the 60s, or even in the 40s, even before then, like when we talk about the women's suffrage movement and the civil rights movement, things of that nature. And it doesn't do justice to, like, I think what's happening now, where I think, when we look at a Ferguson, that's going to be in history books, in appropriate history books anyway, maybe not in history books in Mississippi or Texas, but in history books that are actually like promoting the truth of what's happening in the world presently. And so I think it's easy to kind of turn our noses up to what's happening digitally, especially via social media, where a lot of folks are complaining about hashtag activism. My thing is, man, listen, if you're trying to use your voice for some level of social good, then I think it matters. If anything, I'm probably more upset at folks who do have a platform who are not using their voices in order to try to spread awareness. Because I think, even with me, I struggle with feeling like maybe we fall into like the circle jerk of in the enlightened folks enlightening the enlightened folks. You know what I'm saying? Well, even me, I worry about that with my social media feed, where, a brother like you, who's kind of already at least aware of what's happening and trying to do proactive things in order to kind of help motivate change, is that reaching the brother on the street corner who doesn't fuck with a Twitter or an Instagram, who probably doesn't even really care, who's worried about getting formula for their children or like making sure like they're paying their bills on time, shit like that. So, but I think there's a level of if I'm able to help make someone more aware or increase their level of awareness or increase my own level of awareness, that might help me bring that conversation to a stoop, to a corner, to a block, to a halfway house, to a place where I'm able to actually more or less touch people. I think that's important. Like activism, it's not just us like petitioning and making signs, but I think there's a level of activism that comes with communion and communication with our fellow man, whether that be a white man, black man, an Indian woman, whoever it is, like spreading knowledge, spreading love of self. I think that's a level of activism. I think love is a form of activism. I don't think we talk about that enough. Yeah,
I think that's beautiful. And that's, ultimately, like, you're not talking about anything that's overly complicated,
Right.
It's basic things.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, I think we push to get to the complicated solution for something.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that source of activism could be your neighbor. It could be
absolutely
a family member you're eating dinner with every night. So
we were just talking about that before we started recording, man. It's I think it's little things that help change the world. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's not this. It doesn't have to be this big grandiose thing. Like, okay, well, I'm going to write this book that's going to win a Nobel Peace Prize, or I'm going to open a bookstore in my community, which are all beautiful things, and I think admirable, important, and beautiful goals. But it doesn't have to be that. It's as simple as maybe you buy coffee for the dude that you see outside on the street every single day.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what kind of momentum that can spring forward in you and then also in another person. I remember I went into McDonald's on Thanksgiving and I saw this dude buy a meal for somebody. And granted, it made me feel like, damn, I wish I would have thought about doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But then lo and behold, I went outside and there was an opportunity for me to help another brother who I saw who needed something. And because that happened, my immediate thought was like, man, if I hadn't seen that, would I have been as proactive in my pursuit of making sure I'm doing good for somebody else? You know what I mean? Like, because we get in our headspace and we don't think about those things sometimes. But us doing social good and us living in our truest selves and giving love to people in our truest selves, that's a form of activism. Absolutely.
Yeah. Kindness is contagious. And,
man.
And so I think kind of going with that theme of getting to the basics, I think it's very easy to get caught up in all the things we do, but someone who you are is a father, and you just recently released this book, a book about things I will tell my daughter. Where did this idea come from? And, maybe even who were some of the voices that spoke positively into your life growing up?
I mean, the book came from a need, honestly. I had fallen into a depressive state prior to like deciding I was going to write the book, because I'd been trying to find an agent. I've been trying to find a publisher. I thought I had landed an agent that kind of fell through. And so I was kind of at square one, you know, not really feeling like I was doing much. I had a job. I was working for, at the time, a prospering digital media agency rather. I'd been doing my own personal narrative writing on medium.com, and that had been flourishing, but I didn't really feel like there was like an end goal. I didn't really feel like I was working towards something. And it had been rare for me to kind of be in that space. And so I was like, fuck it, I'm not hearing from anybody. I'm going to self-publish, which was something I had been very strongly against for a while, just because I felt I really wanted to follow the lineage of others who I love, like the Juno Diaz's and the Toni Morrisons of the world. Yeah. Granted, I didn't have my MFA, but I wanted an agent. I kind of wanted to live that writer's experience. I wanted to be completely honest. So I was like, I'm going to self-publish. And in the moment that I did that, I said, okay, what can I write about if I'm going to self-publish, which I wound up not having to do. But with that mindset, it was like, okay, what am I going to write about, and what would I be doing? Because part of that also felt like there have been people who have been asking for a book via social media for at least a couple of years already. And it felt like, you know, not really being sure what people's religious and spiritual preferences are, but I felt like the universe and God were kind of working in unison and saying, listen, if you keep ignoring this thing, you are not going to have the potential to do this thing. And it felt like my daughter was the easiest person to speak through for that. Like my greatest teachers have been women, always. You know, from my mother to like my auntie KK, God bless the dead. My teachers, like a majority of my teachers, like school teachers, had all been women. A majority of like my most important mentors had been women. And so a book about things I would tell my daughter really was as much as it was like a showcase of like poetry and essays, prosaic essays geared towards my love for my daughter. The goal was also to hopefully speak to not just fathers and mothers, but I think to anyone who's been a child, which is literally everyone who's alive at this point in time, and having and wanting to have dialogue surrounding art and poetry and race and gender and what that could look like. And wanting to have something really like legacy for my daughter at the end of the day too, like wanting to have a piece of something that I know she could look back on. Like, God forbid, if I died tomorrow, she could say, this is how my father loved me. And wanting to have that be told through art.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. And, you know, sure, there are things that we can learn from you as you speak to your daughter. And, you know, obviously we can get the book, read it, check it out, all those things. But for you, what have you learned from your daughter?
Oh, man. Lala's just taught me how to see the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, one thing I'd stressed very early on when she was born to other people was, you know, like she has a clean slate. And granted, genetics aside, and environment and things of that nature. Like when I say clean slate, I mean, she does not know what the world looks like until I tell it to her. Like she doesn't know what a couch is. She doesn't know what the moon is. She sees these things, but she has no way to actually label them. And it then becomes my job as her father, as a parent, to do that for her or not. And so I'm helping to create and flesh out the world for her. And so I see the world so much differently now, you know, like having to explain to her what a tree is. And so having to kind of really take root with what definitions are and what they mean, like what simple things like water, you know, just being able to see the world from a very different vantage point. And she's just given me the opportunity to do that. And she just made everything more magical, to being honest. Just because the way she sees the world is so beautiful and so pure. And she gets excited for like very simple things. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's like seeing myself or seeing her mother or like going outside. It's something very exciting for her, you know? And so kind of trying to embrace that on a daily basis. Because, you know, when we tell people, you know, live like it's your last day, I feel like that's so unfair. There's so much pressure in that statement. And it's damn near impossible really to live your day like the last day, because there's so many things that you would want to do in that day that you really can't do every single day. But I think we can take elements of that. And I think my daughter does that. She doesn't really even know what a tomorrow is. She's still learning what that word means and what the definition of that is. And so seeing the world through her and kind of trying to embrace the world through her eyes, it's just been, the lessons are bountiful, to be honest. I can go on and on about it.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. And I asked that because that's definitely been my experience through Car Window Poetry, is through leading workshops with students. I remember going in with an agenda of like, all right, I'm going to show them all this amazing stuff. And, you know, there's a, you know, there's a value for that.
Of course.
There's definitely a responsibility there, but also there's so much that can be received. It's a very mutually transformative experience.
Absolutely.
So, wanted to real quick, just honor you, man. Just to thank you for what you're putting out into the world.
Thank you, bro.
Not only in a sense of, work, but I think just in allowing yourself to be human, to live this life and to really invest in the people who are around you. And, obviously this is, one of the first times we're talking in person, but getting to really be able to, even just through your digital interactions, I can see that there's a sense that you're trying to live this life to the full, man. And that's inspiring for me. And I know it's inspiring for so many others as well. So thank you so much for being you.
Well, I appreciate that immensely. Alex, I think what I wind up saying a lot via social media is I'm just a mirror, man. You know what I'm saying? So any light or any love that anybody feels or sees, it's really just a reflection, I think, so it's, as much as I humbly accept that love, I also know that that's coming from a place of you also living in that space as well. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's really the goal for me. And by no stretch of the imagination am I comparing myself to Jesus, the Messiah, or whomever. But I think from the religious component, again, I'm a spiritual person. I'm not really like a religious, Baptist, Buddhist, whatever the case might be. But I think when folks talked about a Jesus or Muhammad or living like Christ, right? I think the idea was that a person lives through the embodiment of that spirit. And then so that spirit is then a reflection of everything else that the person is living through. And I think ultimately what my goal and my intention is to be that, to be a vessel for that, for change and for love. And really, especially now with a daughter. And so that trying to take every interaction and trying to see the ways in which I can grow. And I fail miserably at that sometimes. There are times where I fuck up and I don't. And I know I'm not living in my fullest potential. I'm not pushing myself in the way that I need to be pushed in order to kind of release and relinquish ego. But having a conversation like this with you is always a constant reminder to kind of come back to center and to try to ground myself in some of the things that I believe in and value, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. And real quick, before we get into the final questions, I want to go into something that you just said there. You started going into some of your goals. What is... Obviously, they're two different parties. So, we have someone like your daughter who you're raising and you have, probably a vision in mind or different things that you're things that you want to tell her in hopes that she become this type of person. And then also right now we have people who are listening to this episode and they could be anywhere in the world doing whatever it is they're doing. But through the life you're living, through the work you're putting out to the world, the words you're sharing, what would be your hope for people? What would you hope that they would take away, or the impact that you could have on somebody through the gifts that have been given to you?
Just to follow your dreams, man. There's these very ongoing conversations about people pursuing their passions and how you don't really develop passion until you actually realize you're good at something. And maybe you don't necessarily need to be passionate about the work you're doing. And I understand that argument. I think for me, I was very blessed that I've kind of always known what I've wanted to do, man. I've known I've kind of wanted to be a performer since I was 6. I'd be in my mama's bedroom, while she was sleeping on the couch because she was scared of my father. I would be in her bedroom creating mini movies and writing out musical albums and writing poems and acting out scenes, some stuff, and not knowing this was going to be the thing, but knowing this is what I gravitated towards always consistently. And I think it's okay for the dream to take shape in different ways. I used to think that I was going to be on the cover of XXL magazine as an MC, as a rapper. And not to say that dream is null and void, but I'm 34 years old and I found a way to kind of repurpose my dream. And I think there's this fear that we have sometimes of having to let dreams go. And I don't think we have to. I think there are people who find, I forget the name of the woman who finally got her art in the Whitney Museum. It might have been the Whitney. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was the Whitney Museum here in New York City. She was 91 years old, And I was reading this article recently in the New York Times about this woman and this man who got remarried, and he was 91 and she was 87 or something along those lines, finding love at that age and recognizing Toni Morrison didn't publish The Bluest Eye until she was 37. we put these timetables on our dreams, and like as time elapses and as we become soccer moms and school teachers, and we kind of fall into like the rigmarole, into like the daily grind of living our lives, and we kind of forget the fact that our dreams, it's okay to still pursue our dreams, and in little ways, like when I look at a Lin Manuel, shout out to Lin, by the way, Lin has been in this constant pursuit of these dreams, you know what I'm saying? And they've taken different shapes. Like Lin is still a rapper, but he was able to take that skill and depth of rapping and turn that into Hamilton. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And granted, he had the heights before that, which is kind of like still a big deal in itself. But people don't know that he was in the group Freestyle Love Supreme before that. And, him like singing in like the choir in high school, you know what I'm saying? And it's recognizing that there's ways for us to take our dreams and fit them into the mold in which we're living now. Like, it doesn't have to be just this thing. I still want a New York Times bestseller, but then when I get that, what's next? There's always going to be something else. And I think the dream can't just be this one big grandiose version of what we imagine for ourselves. It like the New York Times bestseller is a product of the dream. And the biggest dream is to just live a life that's wholesome and full, and have something that I can leave for my daughter, and for my daughter, if she decides to have children, her children as well. Legacy. And what does that look like? And there are things that happen within that legacy that then shape the dream. But the dream takes various forms, and it changes and it shifts, and it's okay for it to be fluid. I guess all that to say, I want people to have fluidity within their dreams. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can have a dream, but recognize the dream can morph, and know the difference between the product of the dream and the dream itself. You know what I'm saying? Like, you wanting to be rich by the time you're 34 is a product of the dream. But then when you get 34 and you reach that goal, there's going to be something else. And so there has to be a bigger version of the dream. And I want to be able to change the world. And I change the world through my art and feed the people that I love through that. And so the things that happen within that dream, those are just products of it. You know what I'm saying? And so just wanting people to kind of keep that in mind, where they continue to push themselves to be better for themselves and for the other people around them, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. No. I think it's really clear there to see, even just in you sharing some of your journey, that you've always been a storyteller. Like there is the thing is, like, it doesn't matter what type of thing you're doing, you're always going to find a way to tell stories. And I think that's something that's been incredibly helpful for me, is that the certain form of storyteller that I may have in my mind may not necessarily be the way that it manifests itself right now. But,
Absolutely.
There can definitely be that. There can definitely be that fluidity, because at the end of the day, that's who I am. Like, I have to tell stories.
Absolutely. And then, like, I think the beautiful thing is too, with age, people talk about age ain't nothing but a number, and I get that, but really it's not. Age is actually a really big deal, because even if you haven't experienced shit in your life, like let's say you've never traveled, you sat in the same couch for 34 years, you've still seen 34 years of life that a person who's maybe 16 and 28 or hasn't seen. Like my mom has lived through World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War. Like, she's lived through the Gulf War. She's lived through Jimmy Carter. She's lived through George Bush Jr. and Sr. at different ages and in different spaces. And so that's important. And I think it's important for us to say, you know what? I'm a storyteller. Me, Alex, I'm a storyteller. But in the story I'm telling now is going to be different than the story I'm telling 10 years from now.
Yeah.
Even if I've put no energy into my growth, into my spirit, it's still going to be different, just because I'm going to be a different person. And that allows for different stories, and that allows for different purpose. And I think that's okay. And I think I would love for people to just be okay with the change and the shift, because it's going to change whether we want it to or not.
Yeah.
You know?
I love it, man. I love it. Well, let me ask you, what's giving you life right now? That could be, a person, that could be a favorite coffee, or I don't know. What's giving you life right now?
Like presently right now in this moment, outside of this conversation, just being outside. It's been a while with like my child that I've been outside by myself without necessarily like a planned agenda for what's going to happen in the next like 3 minutes. And that's something that I'm grateful for. Like trying to kind of like, I'm unemployed right now. And like, there's a level of anxiety with that, because I haven't been unemployed in about 9 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And so even now, freelance writing and following different opportunities in that regard, it's still kind of me trying to live in this space of, okay, it's okay for me to maybe slow down just a little bit. I've never really given myself the opportunity to slow down. My nature as an individual, and really as a Capricorn, has always kind of been to constantly go and ask myself, what's next? Like, what am I doing next? Or what am I not doing that I should be doing?
Yeah.
And kind of trying to just embrace the moment of solace or peace, whatever that might look like for me in the present moment. That, and I was just listening to like the No Worries project with Anderson .Paak and Knowledge.
Yeah.
So like that's kind of the remix version of it, actually, because the remix is tight as fuck. And so I guess that's also kind of giving me life right now.
Man.
Yeah,
so good.
Yeah.
So good. Well, Joel, hopefully after this conversation, people are, and I think they will be, they'll want to know more about you and what you're up to. And, in the same way that I've been encouraged, I imagine people are going to want to be encouraged by what you're sharing as well. So where can people go to follow along with you and your life and just all the things?
I have a website up now. So my daughter mayhave.com. So that's literally spelled out like my daughter mayhave.com, where you can find all the links to my stuff. But I'm on medium.com. I'm on twitter.com, and I'm on instagram.com, all as Joel, Joel, AKA MAG. Joel, AKA MAG, because MAG used to be my rap name when I was like rapping and shit. So, but yeah, Twitter, Instagram, and Medium, I'm all under the same handles. My daughter may have mydaughtermayhave.com website, where you can find links to purchase the book, to my links to my creative portfolio, links to some of like my music stuff that's up on Bandcamp and SoundCloud. Yeah, man, I'm all over digital, so I'm not too hard to find.
He's out there, so y'all check him out. We're gonna make sure all those things are put in the show notes for this episode. But
dope.
Joel, thank you so much, man, and keep making a difference, bro. It matters. It really does.
Same, and likewise to you too, man. So I appreciate the space and the time, brother, and continue to do this beautiful work. I think, again, I think this kind of begins the domino effect for folks to continue to share love amongst ourselves and amongst outside communities, man. And hopefully, the contagion can kind of just carry itself.
Today's episode is produced by me, Alex Lewis, and our awesome music was provided by Julius Tunstall. If you haven't yet gone to the Car Window Poetry Facebook page and checked out our new video, Bryson the Three-Legged Dog, definitely go check that out after this episode. It's a little story inspired by a third grader I met during my first ever Car Window Poetry workshop. If you enjoyed today's episode, I encourage you to go to your Apple Podcast app and leave us a 5-star rating and review, as that's a big way more people can learn about the show and be impacted by these conversations. Until next time, you matter, you are enough. Remember these words when times get tough. Thanks for listening.